episode of JRCtv. Today we're going to be focused on the topic of love and relationships, specifically what happens on the first date. Now, this is something that I've learned over the years. So many people prepare for and have so much anxiety and tension and so many questions. What do you wear? Where do you go? Do you pick her up? Do you meet her there? For the ladies, what do you talk about? What things do you bring up? What things do you not bring up? How revealing or how closed off should you be? Should you go Dutch? Should you pay? Should you offer to pay? Should you let him pay? There's so many questions that go on with this that make it so nerve-wracking and so much tension building up leading up to this moment. The other thing that tends to happen is when you go on this first date, there's so much tension building up to it, yet excitement as well, but usually tension, that you get there and you put on your best performance. What do I mean by this? You show up and you dress your best and you show off your best attributes and you tell them all your best features of who you are and what you've done and where you've been and what's so exciting about you, and they put on their performance and tell you how amazing they are and all the things they love to do and all the things they've done. And after this grand performance, you head home and nowadays normally go into a series of text messages to see if they like you and how long it's gonna last and all the rest. Here's what I've learned. I went through this myself for a very long period of time, and I remember going on first date after first date after first date after first date, and pretty soon just getting tired of it and finally taking time to learn and study and read as much as I could on the topic. And I never forget, I ran across one specific piece of information that absolutely blew my mind. Because it was so simple, yet it was so specific. And it said something completely unexpected that I would have never thought was gonna actually work. But I used this one piece of advice and I tried it out, and this is actually how I met the love of my life, and now we're getting married later this year. So I'll save that one piece of advice to the end, but I want to give you a little insight of how it worked. And part of the advice really truly says the only way you get to know someone is when they're naturally in a place they can feel like they can be themselves. They feel they can be open, authentic, real. They can say what they normally say, act like they normally act, be who they really are. And so before I tell you the advice, let me tell you first about our first date and then see what Amanda thought it was. We have a different opinion here. My belief was our first date was we first met at a get-together at our neighbor's house. We talked for about 4.5 hours, which I'm sure it'd be hard to imagine us doing that. And after 4.5 hours of talking to each other, I looked at her and asked her if she was hungry. She said she was, and I made sure to grab a friend, and all three of us headed out to dinner. And that's what I call our first date. But let's see what she thought our first date was.
No. That's not how it went at all. Our first date, I specifically remember, was this beautiful day in San Diego, and we had been, up until this point, just hanging out with friends. And then finally one day he asked me if I wanted to go sailing with him around the bay in San Diego. And I was so excited. This was gonna be the first time that was just him and I hang out. So I thought that was our first date.
So as you can tell, she didn't even think that's our first date, and I certainly knew it was our first date because I was using this piece of advice and this information that I learned. And what was fascinating is doing it in the setting we did, it gave her the ability to really just be herself, to be authentic, to have fun. And actually, let's see how she would describe that first date, if we do call it our first date.
So looking back and thinking that was our first date, I have to say it was an amazing first date. It was absolutely an amazing first date because it was a space and a place where we could just be ourselves, and it was very fun and carefree, and it wasn't so forced or awkward, or it can be somewhat uncomfortable because it didn't feel like an interview process. It felt like, there were a couple people there and you could just be yourself, and you didn't really have to impress. It wasn't like this unnatural, uncomfortable situation. It was actually very comforting and fun, and we had a great time, and I could see his true character and true self around friends and vice versa for me. So it was amazing, and I highly recommend it.
So as you can tell, going out there on a first date and having other people around, being in a group, being in an environment where she could be herself, she could relax, have fun, no tension, very carefree, laid back. It gave her such freedom to be herself, and it gave me, honestly, freedom to be myself. So this magical tip we learned was never, ever, 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 ever go on a first date with just you and the other person. Now, I know when I heard that piece of advice, I was thinking, really? Is it even a date then? Aren't you just hanging out? And I was a bit skeptical myself, but what I learned was when you go on that first date with just you and the other person, you guys become the two best actors you've ever met in your entire life. Versus when you go on that date in a group setting, you get to be yourself, hang out, have fun, be goofy, be silly, be weird, be whoever you really are. And it really gets you to know who they are at the deepest level so that you can truly continue to be yourselves down the road. Now, there's a couple other tips I've learned along the way that I put in today's download to give you a little slight edge on making sure you have the most abundant and really fun first dates you could imagine. So make sure to download today's download, enjoy the process, have fun with this, and really leave us a comment. Tell us what your first date was like. Tell us your worst first date and your best first date. These should be entertaining. Leave us that comment, download the worksheet, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week for another episode of JRCtv. Till then, have an amazing week. Bye.